Good morning and welcome to the Local Assistance Day, the quarterly statewide webinar. Caltrans, the Division of Local Assistance, is in partnership with the Regional Transportation Planning Agency Group, who is providing this quarterly statewide webinar. The purpose of this webinar is to share information, including local project delivery policy, processes, and procedures, as well as we want to make sure that we're facilitating peer sharing of best practices. This is a free webinar, which is open to all project managers, engineers, and all of those who work with local assistance processes for local and tribal agencies. So this morning you see the agenda on your screen, and we will be presenting subsidized training resources for local and tribal agencies, Highway Bridge Program and Infrastructure Investment Job Act, Agency Risk Assessment Program, so construction manager, general contract, project bundling and partnering. And we will close with Tulare County Public Works, the secrets to project completion. So with that, as a reminder, once again, questions, please put them in the Q&A because we capture them. And if we don't have time to answer every question you have today, we will capture them and answer them and post them on the website so that you have access to all the information you need. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Ryan Niblock. Welcome, Ryan.
Hi there. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So yes, I'm Ryan Niblock from the San Joaquin Council of Governments, and this year I am serving as the moderator for the statewide Regional Transportation Planning Agencies group. So just on behalf of the RTPA group, I just want to say that I'm delighted to see that we're expecting so many people. It sounded like we had some 500 people reserved a spot on this. And I just wanted to express appreciation to both local assistance and Sac State for being able to accommodate everyone and put this all together. So the team put together, as was mentioned, an agenda that's going to cover a mix of hot topics and best practices. And there's great speakers to go along with each one of these. As was noted, we're going to be talking about the Highway Bridge Program, which is perhaps the most oversubscribed and in-demand funding program that we've got, as well as some of the latest details on IIJA, which I know we're all eager to dig into and get going with projects. And many of our local partners are asking us questions, and it's great to connect so that we can start to provide better answers to them. So we're also covering critical subjects related to project delivery, such as agency risk assessment and the keys to project completion, coming from on-the-ground examples in Tulare County. So, my partners in the Valley. So I'm very excited to be here to listen, learn, and ask questions. And the last thing I'll say is that these local assistance trainings, and this may be somewhat duplicative here, but they're designed to provide useful information to help us all do our jobs more effectively and to provide a forum to tackle tough issues with subject matter experts at our fingertips. So that being said, I just want to repeat something that my predecessor, Don Batiste, said last year. This experience is going to be what we make of it. So please look for your opportunities to participate actively today. Ask your questions, get in there. And the aim is to provide these workshops on a regular basis. So also don't be shy to identify future topics for these workshops. So look forward to get going, and I'll stop there. Hand it back to Nicole.
All right. Thank you so much, Ryan. Really appreciate that. Now we're going to shift over to Sherry Graham with Department of Transportation, who will be covering the training and resources.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sherry Graham, and I am the Training and Communications Coordinator for the Division of Local Assistance. I work with Federal Highway Administration and 3 of our contracted universities to provide training and resources for California local and tribal agencies. In about 9 minutes or less, maybe 10 minutes, I'm going to cover about 6 pertinent websites that provide agencies reduced cost training and local and national news. Please note, all of these links will be provided in the chat field, and we will also have it as a PDF format in the participant portal, which will provide you that link before the end of today as well. As you can see on screen, many of you are actually familiar with the Local Technical Assistance Program. This website, the LTAP website, is actually going through a renovation, a remodel. So when you go to find the typical LTAP center, you might get redirected. And so this link up at the top, we'll go ahead and put that in the chat as well. And let me adjust something on my screen real quick for all of you. There we go. Okay, so on this website, things may look different, obviously. It has changed. Some of you are more frequent with visiting the site for specific trainings that were previously provided through Sac State. I'll give you more information about that in just a moment. So on this site, what is the new intent and new motivation for this is that it will be connecting with more rural and tribal agencies, build a community of local partnerships by assessing agency needs and providing through new innovation. So on here, it's going to be a one-stop shop hub for information, for local technical assistance program information. But if you go up to training, that's where you would find those typical trainings that you may be familiar with through the LTAP. The easiest way also is if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see current trainings that are happening. And then if you'd like to contact them specifically, you can find the information at the very bottom of the page. If you'd like to join the new LTAP email roster, you can join it through this link at the very bottom. Once again, we will put this information in the chat field. Please, once again, be patient with us. It isn't under renovation, so it doesn't have the full features that we may be accustomed to. But if you have any other questions, we'll go ahead and drop in the chat now. You can contact CPIE-California LTAP at csulb.edu, and they can assist you with any questions regarding the LTAP Center and the renovation of this website. So that brings me to, many of you are familiar. If you go to the training page and you're looking for where are all those great trainings, the Resident Engineer Academy, the right-of-way, or the federal aid series, they're currently not housed here. But if you kindly will go to, let me go back to that page. It says, tell me more, right? We're going to introduce you to the new Cooperative Training Assistance Program. This is housed by Sacramento State College of Continuing Education, who is actually producing today's event. This is where you will find all those trainings that I referenced regarding resident engineer, grant writing, right-of-way, and the federal aid series. If you scroll down, you'll see the trainings that are most current, but also if you go up top, it's very simple. There's training, drop-down menu, and you can register for trainings here. And it will list all the most active trainings that you are accustomed to. In addition, also the equipment loan program that some of you may or may not be familiar with. That is great information. Please visit that when you have the time. And in addition, there are multiple resources available. I'd also like to bring your attention to the training and recordings page that some may be familiar with. We have previous recordings of events and documents, so please go ahead and check that out as well. The third website that I'd like to share with you that some of you may be familiar with is the UC Berkeley Tech Transfer. Those are the real technical trainings that some of you may be aware of. And if you visit their homepage, listed in the search engine here, view your full training schedule, go straight to that, and you're going to see all these options. These are subsidized trainings through Caltrans Division of Local Assistance. So we want you to have access to them. We want you to take them. If you do have particular questions about UC Berkeley Tech Transfer, you can also go ahead and contact their registrar. We'll go ahead and drop that in the chat, and the registrar at techtransfer.berkeley.edu. We'd also like to hear any particular trainings that may be helpful to your agency and or that might be universal to the industry. We want to hear that feedback so that we can work with our contracted universities to build those trainings for you. The fourth website that I would like to share is the TTAP. So some of you may be familiar with TTAP. That's the Tribal Technical Assistance Program through the Federal Highway Administration. This is their newly published website that is great. I got some time to spend with this. I highly recommend that you visit this particular website. It has great resources for tribal organizations. And if you actually scroll down to the bottom, there's some great new information that Federal Highway Administration is reestablishing. For tribal agencies, what you want to know is that the Western TTAP Center has been awarded to the National Indian Justice Center, NIJC. So they just got awarded the contract that will be announced publicly this month, but look for that to come online. In addition, on the TTAP, if we scroll up to the top, you're going to see training tools and resources. That is really important if you want to find online learning or on demand. In addition, there are additional resources and tools, and you can also see the conference and event calendars. So please go ahead and visit the TTAP, Federal Highway Administration, great resources. Oh, last note, grants and funding. I want you to know about that. There's funding out there. I forgot, almost missed that one. So please go ahead and find that information. I'm not going to go through all these tabs, obviously. We do have select time. And then I'd like you to bring you to our public webpage for Division of Local Assistance. We actually have a training and resource page. It gives you information about our 3 contracted universities. It also talks about the equipment loan program. And it also will let you know we have previous links to information, whether it's videos or PDFs of previous trainings. We have the Resident Engineer Academy, which is getting a slight little upgrade and will go live September, the end of September. We have the Senate Bill, Single Audits Report, and then we have additional resources and information. And at the very bottom, if you really need to get a hold of this, we have all our information here. Now, the best way to stay up to news and know all this information is if you visit the DLA blog. We go ahead and post federal and state news. We also release office bulletins through here. And the best way to stay informed is on the right hand of the screen on the homepage, is if you go ahead and enter your contact information, it will connect you with Constant Contact. You'll be enrolled with that. And what that helps us do is we can make sure that you're getting that information. We send out information weekly through Constant Contact. It's state and federal information, training, news that you need to know for local and tribal agencies. In addition, we also, we also send out office bulletins as well, pertinent information that you need to know that fulfills federal and state regulations. So once again, all these websites are going to be dropped into the chat field. We also have it located, and I'm going to show you this final tab, which is new. This is the participant portal for this event. We're going to go ahead and get that in the chat as well. And we'll add it to the webinar presentation and PowerPoints, which will be a PDF format so that you can have all this information. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. And let's see if we have any questions that we may need to answer live or we can answer at a later time. Who helps to join Berkeley trainings for Caltrans staff? That's a great question. Can you give me hopefully a little more context to that? What I'm implying from that question that I see is who helps to join Berkeley trainings for Caltrans staff? Let's see. I see a raised hand, but unfortunately you can't necessarily go live mic. If you want to throw that back in the Q&A, that might help. You can also reach me directly at caltrans.dla@dot.ca.gov. And we'll go ahead and put that in there. And you can reach out to us directly and we can answer any additional questions. Oh, okay.
Hey, Sherry.
All right. I see Laura's question, or Daniel, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Sherry. So the question is, who helps to join Berkeley trainings for Caltrans staff? Berkeley trainings are for all agencies, especially designed for local public agencies, as these are very technical classes such as pavement, concrete, safety, planning, funding. So Berkeley hires their own staff and they perform the training on behalf of and in conjunction with Caltrans.
Great, thank you, Daniel. If you have any additional questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat and we'll go ahead and collect those and answer those and get those as a PDF format on the participant portal. Also, once again, you can reach us and I'll drop my contact information in the chat field that you can reach out and ask us any additional questions regarding training, news, or resources. We're really glad that you joined us, and please feel free to share this information with others. Thank you. I'm going to pass it back over to Nicole.
Thank you so much, Sherry, for that wonderful and valuable information on training and resources. And now we are going to pass it over to Robert Peterson, who's going to be talking about Highway Bridge Program and Infrastructure Investment Job Act updates. So thank you, Robert, and welcome.
All right, thank you, Sherry. So do you have, do I have to do my own PowerPoint or?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll share it. I just want to make sure because I know I did send it to you. All right, so welcome everyone. I'm Robert Peterson. Let me get my screen to come up right. Everybody see that?
Yep, we can see it.
There we are.
Beautiful.
Okay. All right. So yeah, as I mentioned, I'm Robert Peterson. I'm the office chief over the federal programs, Office of Federal Programs here in Caltrans Division of Local Assistance. My office oversees many of the federal programs. Some we actively manage, others we're kind of a pass-through for agreements. Some of the federal programs we might share with the state office, depending on how things go. New programs are coming up, and so there's conversations on who's going to be coordinating those, especially on the state side. Sometimes there's a federal and a state, but we all work together and we will definitely figure it out. But so what I'm going to be touching on today are just a few of the programs. As was mentioned, I'll touch on the bridge program, but I also will touch on other federal programs that are in my office. And of course, as you know, the funding opportunities are in play right now for some of the grants. I'll touch on those, but some of the oversight is still a little bit up in the air as far as what our role will be, because obviously the US DOT issues, they're the ones that award the grants. So as far as the administrating of those, we will definitely keep everyone up to date on how those will go about, and making sure that everybody gets their funds in a timely manner. So I'm just going to touch on a few here. The carbon, of course, is a formula and protect. Those are new under IIJA. Talk about the Reconnecting Community Pilots Grant. It's a new under IIJA. I'll talk about bridge funding. As you know, we got the bridge investment and also the grant opportunity as well under the bridge, which is good news for the BIP. Safe Streets for All is another grant. I'll talk a little bit about the HSIP. That's not new, but it increased the funding, and I'll kind of go a few slides over that. The community projects funding is the earmarks. It's not called earmarks, but we like to fondly call it earmarks. As you know, earmarks were something in prior legislation that was there. Then the last couple, the federal acts earmarks have not been part of that funding, but they are back this time. And then I'll just touch on a grant for the railroad crossing elimination. And then the emergency relief is not a new grant. What that is it's a federal requirement. It's important enough to where I want to bring this into the training. Bob Buck, one of my senior that manages the ER program, there's some new requirements that have FHWA has asked us to incorporate CFR 667 into our process, and these are areas where damage has been repeated, and so there's some requirements, and I'll get more into that. And I have Bob with me on the line, but there's going to be some information that's going to be coming out on that and training, just to make sure that we are in compliance of that federal regulation. So with the carbon reduction program, as you know, we did release parts of the funding out for the regions that are, or for the areas over 200,000. As you know, this is a new program, but there's some guidance, further guidance that is coming down as far as what to put the funding on. But the purpose of the program, of course, is to reduce carbon emissions. And so that was part of this year's funding. However, the guidance was not part of it. And so the OA we had OA that came with the funding. And so that was included in this year's OA, but it was not, I don't think we had any projects that went to that. And of course, all that funding will carry over for next year. So there is conversations as far as what eligibility, what projects will be eligible. So stay tuned for those. But there is a IIJA working group that's working to put that together. And so as we get more information, we'll be sharing that. But as you can see, it is split from between the state and the local side. So the local side got 69.4 million this fiscal year, and then next year we're going to continue to get more. And so and part of one of the complications is the splitting up of the funding between the areas. And so the over 200,000, they were defined, but there was also another category that was added with the population. So between 50 to 200, 5,000 to 49,000, and areas under 5,000. Those were not been determined. And so those are being worked on. Unfortunately, the 2020 census is what was going to be used, but apparently that information is not available yet to make those funding splits to all the different areas around the state, or even around the nation, if you will. So from my understanding, it sounds like we might be using the 2010, but then eventually we'll go with the 2020 once that information becomes available. But once we know that information, we'll be sharing it out and working to get those funding splits. But right now, the target date for the 2020 urban area maps is the end of this year. So as far as availability, there's the obligations. You have up to 3 years after the last day of the fiscal year. And so you have up to 4 years to obligate your shares that you get. There's also a website that has been set up for that. My office will be overseeing that, and that program as far as the any questions and any information. We'll go through my office to administer. I'm assuming they'll be similar to like the HIP funds, where we'll be helping out with reporting, making sure that the agencies are obligating their funds and putting notifications out to help out answer any questions as far as eligibility. So for the other one is the Protect. The Protect is another one that's a formula, and there has been some new guidance that has been issued with the Protect. As you know, the Protect is really more the resiliency to making sure that there's areas that have had repeated damage, areas that really need more resiliency on the roadways. Those funds could be used for that. There's also a competitive grant that's also part of the Protect. I don't believe that that announcement has been made. I could be wrong, but that OA, of course, was released this year. And of course, that will also be carried over to next year as far as the apportionments to be utilized. So with the split, it also is split between the state and the local. And so from conversations we've had recently, the portion that will be going to the local sounds like it might be, looks like it's going to be administered by, or the CTC is going to be rolling out guidance for the local share side. And so stay tuned for that. The state side will be using their apportionment to identify locations to put that funding towards. And there's also some requirements in there as far as the limitations and the set aside. So you could read that into the guidance. I won't go into that more, but it's in the guidance that was just issued. And another thing, they're indicating that the federal share is 80%, but if you have a plan, in place, then that actual share becomes less, or they'll actually kick in more of the federal share. So it could be up to 90% that they will pay for, as long as you have a plan in place. And there's the website for any more information about the Protect program. And again, we will also have a website available for, we'll house all this information to help local agencies out with their projects. Here's a grant funding. You probably have seen this in the past with the Reconnecting Community Pilots. There's also a state Highways to Boulevard, I believe it's called, the state side in the state program where they've also identified funding. So it's kind of the sister to the state and the federal. And so there's been discussions about working together with both the state funds and the federal funds for these community pilot type of funding. So as you can see, the application for this notice of funding opportunity is coming up next month, middle of the month, and there's also a website there for more information. Again, we'll also be setting up a website should any of these grants be awarded to California, and we'll be working closely with the Highways to Boulevard as well to make sure that we're collaborating on these efforts. So with the Highway Bridge Program, you probably have heard me before, or maybe in other avenues as far as the program. We did get additional funding for the Highway Bridge Program, which is really good news. As you know, as you've heard from Ryan, that has been very overprescribed. But there is some caveats with this increased funding, and I will point that out later on here. But as you know, the bridge program is really a safety program to get our bridges in good condition, from poor to fair to good. And so that's the scope of the program. And so there's obviously specific criteria that your bridges need to be in before it'll be eligible for HPP funds. So what's new in IIJA, of course, is the Bridge Formula Program, which is $27.5 billion nationwide over 5 years. And then, of course, the Bridge Investment Program, which is a grant funding opportunity of $9.2 billion over the 5 years. And of course, that is shared with all the 50 states. So with the core apportionment, the NHPP and the SDBGP, the NHPP is for the on system on the federal aid. So that was increased. We typically, if you recall, we were getting about 300 million a year. And that was for the last number of years. And that 300 million did not have a cost of living adjustment, if you will. So it was stagnant at 300 million and it stayed at 300 million. So as you can imagine, when bridges, the cost of constructing bridges went up and everything else went up and our funding stayed the same, obviously you realize that we've got to reduce the amount of projects within the program to keep it sustainable, which is what has happened. We haven't incorporated any new projects within the program since 2018. When I first started, I think we had over 1,000 bridges within the program, and now we're down to a little over 700, just because we're trying to right the ship, if you will, and not to be so far underwater with the amount of funding that we have promised to local agencies. A lot of local agencies have AC'd their projects, and so we've got to then reimburse those agencies back with federal funds. So the STBGP is the off the federal aid system. So that increased from 75 to 100. So we did get a bump in the core apportionment, which is good. But it's really not going to make much of an impact, as you know. The cost increases would eat up what we've been getting in the core apportionment. So the bridge formula, the new apportionment, comes from the general fund, but that with the general fund comes with different strings attached to that. We got 574 million, and of course that was split between state and local. And so with the split, the local share was 253, but of course then that gets split between on and off system. So when you start splitting up the pie, pretty soon the on system is really where we're mostly impacted right now. And so it's good to have the funding, but is maybe not as much as we would like, but we'll take what we can get. So as I mentioned, the bridge formula has obligation deadlines. So 3 years after the funds have been obligated, that you've got to, or 3 years they're available, you've got to obligate. And then it's 5 years that it has to be expended. So that's good. We obviously, FHWA wanted to make sure that this funding went to projects that were, ready to go, maybe shovel ready, if you'd say, and ready to be put to use. And so really that's what that the funding is for. And so with that, our strategy that we're going to be doing for putting this funds to work is we're going to be paying for existing projects that are already in construction. High cost bridge projects, of course, are part of that. We've got, I think, over $500 million of AC, which means we owe that money to all the local agencies. they've used their own funds to move their project forward, but there was a promise to pay when you AC a project, and so that's the first priority. And so with that note below there, the HBP, we are going to be using the bridge formula funds on construction and right-of-way phases due to the expenditure deadlines. If we start putting bridge formula funds on new projects, then if a project, as you know, bridge projects take longer than 3-4 years sometimes to deliver, sometimes 6, 7, 10 years. So with that, we realize that you can't put that funding on a project, and if it fails to progress, then those funds will lapse and be taken away, and so we don't want that to happen. And so we're going to be putting our bridge formula on projects that are in construction and right away, because we know obviously once it gets to that phase, projects move along and funds are expended, and there's no problems with funding to get lapsed. So, and of course, the priority 2, projects ready to advertise. That'll be our next second priority. Third priority is nearly ready to advertise and projects that could potentially advance. They're in the FTIP, but they could advance to an earlier year. We are definitely looking for those opportunities, and then of course projects on the prioritization list. And this means projects that have been waiting in the wings to get into the program. And so I'm happy to share at our last meeting with the Bridge Advisory Committee that the advisory committee recommended to accept on and off federal aid projects within the program. And so there was a list that we provided, that my team provided to the committee, and they accepted our recommendation. So we're right now, we're starting to getting those projects within within our database, and we'll be notifying the agencies. So and they'll be incorporated into the FTIP. As you know, within our rules and our guidance, that usually there's about 2 years out before you can get funds for those. But that all that means is an agency can get ready to get a consultant on board, and so when the funds become available, they can come in on day 1 of that year and get their funds to get started. And so that's so look for that. So our message is deliver, deliver, deliver. So there should be no reason that you're holding back with any of the funding. Like we said, this Bridge Formula program is a 5-year of funding. There's no guarantees that funding will continue in the future legislation. And so we recognize this as a one-time shot in the arm. And so we want to make sure that those projects move forward, and we will. Many agencies have received probably their annual status as far as their projects. We want to point out that when you do send in your status of your projects, to make sure that you give us, reasonable deadlines, reasonable expectations as far as where your project at. Don't be too optimistic and think that maybe you're going to make a milestone when maybe in the back of your head, it's like, yeah, we're probably not going to miss this, but we want to get in line here. So it really doesn't do us any good if you say you're going to get to the next milestone when in reality you're probably not. All that does is just hold back funding for maybe another project could have been put in the delivery plan for this year, next federal fiscal year coming up. So be realistic on your targets, but also realize that if you can try to, put some urgency to get to the next milestone, that's something that we want to encourage, so we can get these projects going and to use up as much funding as we can. So as I mentioned, the discretionary grant funding has come up. We've been asked to provide letter of support for a number of these that have come in. And so my team has taken a look at a lot of those letters of support and provided their feedback. So we thank everyone for sending in their applications for this. As you can see, the due dates, I think for the one has already passed. I know there was a NOFO for the planning, and I think that was in July. And then I think of course, there was a large bridge projects portion, and then there was the regular bridge. And so the due dates, as you can see, August 9th is already passed, and September 8th is, well, today. So yeah, so this opportunity grant funding, of course, is for this round, but there will be another, of course, a round of funding that's going to come up as well. So it's anticipated that within these 5 years of grant funding, that there will be a notice of funding opportunity that's going to happen every year. So hopefully ones that were not successful, hopefully they're I would anticipate maybe US DOT will maybe come out with, how projects were successful and maybe some of the lessons learned of how to maybe to tweak your application and make it more competitive. Hopefully that'll be something that that will be shared to see how some were successful and why others maybe weren't, and maybe to help out local agencies for the next round. And of course, here's they have a Q&A website for the bridge formula, or for the bridge investment program, and it's really pretty comprehensive. So I encourage everyone to check that out. And I'm sure that'll be added to as the projects get announced, and then the next round gets for the next round of funding gets announced later on, probably early next year. Sorry about the small text on this. I didn't realize how small it is, but the Safe Streets for All is another grant opportunity. This one, it falls in the safety program area. As you probably likely know, that we've been embarking on having safety action plans, local road safety plans in the local HSIP. So this is just the federal action to get plans out there, but obviously they took it a step further, and they indicated that in their Safe Streets for All program that not only will you give funding to do plans, safety action plans, but you also can get funding if you want to do some capital improvements in those areas too, which is kind of interesting. Because that just adds another wrinkle of not only do you have a plan, but you can also get funding to actually implement that plan, and even the infrastructure part of it too as well. So, which is a good thing, because as you know, Cycle 11 call for projects has come up shortly, and so if some agencies get funding for infrastructure within this program, then maybe they don't need to then go forward with our program, but or if maybe they don't feel like our program they'll be competitive enough, maybe the Safe Streets can provide that avenue to get funding for their project. But as you can see, the September 15th deadline is coming up very shortly here. So hopefully everybody's got their grants nearly complete to be submitted. This is just from the website of just the example of the activities that they will accept from the planning structure analysis, equity. So all these are on their website. I just took that and just highlighted the things that they will accept as far as all the different activities that they will give funding to for any agency that wants to work for their action plan for safety. So let's just touch on ASIP a little bit. as you know, the cycle 11 is coming due for the application September 12th, which is next Monday. So we will accept applications electronically by 11:59 p.m. So if you want to wait till the last minute, if you're like any other college, if you're in a college class and they accept it by 11:59, we will accept those. So we've in the last cycle, we had over 400 applications. We're expecting maybe just as much for that this go around. We just kind of wanted to show you the funding that has come into the state. We did get about a 35%, I think 36% increase from our funding from from MAP 21. Just want to show you the split. As you know, we share the HSIP with the state side, and also the railroad RHCP, which is the Railroad Highway Crossing Program. There's a cutout, there's a carve out from the HSIP that goes to that program. So that's 17 million, and all of that funding goes to the local side. And so even though we split 50-50, even though it doesn't show that it's 50-50, you can add the 17 to the 120. So that 120 million increase is increase from in years past, it was only at 80. So we got a $40 million increase in our apportionment, which is really good. And then the type of applications, of course, we accept are the benefit cost ratio and the set asides. So I just touch on the HSIP. We do take our direction from a HSIP advisory committee. We meet 6 times a year. There's some special rules that have kicked in years past. We had a high risk rural road, and this year they added a vulnerable road users, VRU. That also was triggered this year. And so with that trigger comes FHWA requirements that we have to obligate certain amount of HSIP funding to satisfy those. Because H3R was triggered this year, then we will need to be making sure we obligate some of the funding towards those high-risk rural roads. So that's what H3R stands for, and it's a roadway classification. So 99% of them are on local roads. We've indicated to FHWA that our program will take care of that and satisfy those. So with that rule, unfortunately, we might have to federalize some of those applications. As you know, we do a state funded, we do a swap with, we do an exchange with the state, with the federal HSIP with state funds. So for cycle 10, everything was state funded. But because this special rule got kicked in, some applications might have to be federalized, but we will be notifying those agencies should that happen. And of course, we're encouraging agencies to adopt the safe system approach for their local road networks. And you could read, there's a lot of information out there about the safe system approach. So I encourage you to read about what that means. I do know a lot of cities and counties have adopted a lot of that practices already within their safety policies within their cities and counties, which is nice to see. So just touch on the community project funding, which is the earmarks, big long word there. So you're going to see on our website, CPF, CDS, and it's really the more or less an earmarks that comes with a special act. And they also authorized 1.5 trillion in spending over the 5 years. And so cycle 1, the projects were announced. You'll see that on our website. Cycle 2, those applications I think are being looked at, and there'll probably be announcements will be made on which ones are successful for cycle 2. And then cycle 3, I think the call is probably going to be early next year for that call for these type of earmarks. Again, we've set up a website to make sure that agencies are aware, which projects were funded, and then how you go about getting your funds. And so for cycle 1, we have 45 projects that were awarded for California, around 92 million. And here's a sample of some of the projects that were selected or that were funded. We have our website set up. So we have an application, and the reason why we have an application, some might ask, well, why do you need an application? We've already got the funding. Well, we need to know what type of project it is. Do you have other funding tied to it? What is the scope? We want to make sure that we have all the information on what type of project that you're going to move forward with. So any questions on that, please work with my team on that. So we have all those links on our website for the Q&A and the application and the process. We have a process that you can follow to get your application approved. And then once you get your application approved, or to make sure that we all understand all the different nuances of it. It's a fairly simple application to fill out. And then once we approve it, and then you can come forward and get your RFA for that funding. So with this cycle, the deadline for obligation is a few years out. But then also the expenditures is then 5 years after that. So it looks like everything nowadays that with these authorizations, there becomes deadlines. In prior legislation, sometimes that wasn't the case, and so we're still dealing with some funding that didn't have deadlines, and so their FHWA and USDOT is making sure that everything now has deadlines, so projects don't sit there in perpetuity. Just another grant program I wanted to highlight. Just the funding for the railroad crossing elimination. So information on that. There's a link to it, and then the deadline, of course, looks like the end of this month. So a lot of these NOFOs application due dates are coming up very soon. So I just want to touch on the ER program, the provision. This is something that has been in prior legislation. But we've been a little slow, I think, in getting it incorporated on this within the programming. Really what it is evaluating of facilities that have been repeatedly damaged due to emergency events. So the requirement is that you've got to, it's going to be tied to approving the FTIP and the FSTIP. And so agencies need to, if you have locations that are in the FTIP that have these areas that have repeated damage, that there's going to be requirements that you take steps to provide some resiliency to those locations. And so it applies to everything within the FTIP. So in a nutshell, if one or more of your repeated damage locations are within the proposed limits, then the local agency must consider adding to the project a resilient improvement to address the root cause of the repeated disaster damage. So this is something that in the last FTIP, we noticed there was a gap. FHWA indicated that we are not complying with this 667. And so we are moving forward with some guidance on that. And so my team has been working with Abhijit with the financing program to make sure that these are addressed in this next coming FTIP that's coming up. And really what it is the purpose is to fully reduce the need for federal relief funds. As you know, ER funds are very limited nationwide. A lot of agencies probably haven't got reimbursed on probably disaster funds from maybe for many years ago. And so really the whole point of this is to reduce that need if we address it with other means and other funds that hopefully years down the road, those ER type of repairs will be reduced. So look for additional guidance on the procedures to get into shortly. So here's the federal programs contacts. So of course, the first your first go is your DLAE within the districts. Your district local assistance engineers have a link to them. And of course, if you can also contact me if you need help with any of my programs, and I will help you out as much as I can. That's all I got. So thank you. Any questions?
As a reminder, please put all of your questions in the Q&A so that we can answer them live right now while we have Robert here to do so. And thank you, Robert. That was a very informative presentation. And we're just waiting to see if there are any questions. Here we go. How is the ER provision for resiliency improvements different than hazard mitigation?
So what I referred to with the 667 with the federal legislation, I don't know if there's anything different. What I'm indicating is with any project that gets programmed within the FTIP, that there needs to be an assessment to make sure that if you're identifying, let's say you have a project in an area, but you've got a spot within that has had repeated damage, that project needs to have extra funding or extra consideration of making sure that they've incorporated more resilient design to reduce the need for future ER funding. So it's just a requirement that agencies make sure that they've incorporated that with any and all their projects that they programmed within the FTIP.
May I also respond?
Yeah, Bob, go ahead.
Great, thank you. Yeah, Peter has it correct. The ER provision, actually these resiliency requirements are for all federally funded projects. They're tied to the ER program, but they're actually not part of the ER program. And so ER takes care of the immediate repairs to like Band-Aid the project and then permanent repairs. But what the resiliency requirements are that all new federal aid projects have to evaluate the limits of their proposed project to determine if there's been one or more sites that have been damaged in one or more disaster events. And if so, then they need to evaluate and consider whether or not there's a resiliency fix to prevent or to address the root cause of the repeated damage that they can add to their project. It doesn't require them to implement that in their project, but they do have to consider it and document that. And we're going to have a webpage that will be posted very soon within the next week or so. And it'll have all the requirements and everything attached to this. So a lot more information will come out, and we have forms that'll make this easy. This is required for projects to be programmed in the FTIP, and it's required for projects to get authorization, particularly for right-of-way and construction. I'm working with FHWA, so there'll be a few changes from the program that I presented in the CPFG meeting, but those will all be spelled out, and so it'll all be on our webpage, and I'll have my contact information there. You can contact me if you have any questions.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Bob. Appreciate that. And now we're going to move to the next question. Just for clarification, are there some federal funds for HISIP cycle 11?
So at this point, our intention is most will be state funded. So we're going to do an exchange. But so what's going to happen is right now we're kind of in a process of we've still got federal projects, federal HISIP from prior cycles that we're trying to work through the system. So we can't do a full exchange because we're authorized to exchange up to $100 million. But as you saw on the PowerPoint, we've got a portion up to 120 million. So we're going to get to the point where we can exchange 100 million, but we won't have enough funding, for state to use the state funds. And so some projects will have to stay federalized just because we've only can exchange so much, but we'll do as much as we can to make sure that we're going to, fund all cycle 11s, with state funds as much as possible. As I indicated, the H3R. So if your project is on an H3R classification roadway, typically it's in a rural environment. We might have to federalize that so we can obligate those funds. So we can, show within the obligations that they are that funding was toward a H3R project. And the state side can't do that because they don't have those type of roadway classifications, but the locals do. And so it's not much. I think in our last thing is like $17 million we're required to obligate. And so every year that we get that we trigger that, then there's a special provision or a special amount of funding that they apply to, and they'll tell us how much we have to obligate, and then we will move forward with that. So yes and no. I guess is the thing is we'll try to use every project to be state cash as much as possible, state funds, but there will be some ones we won't be able to.
Very good. Thank you. We have another question, which is there a timeline to launch the state program? Did you catch that one, Robert?
No, you froze
Okay.
up.
Oh no. Okay, so let me say that again. To launch the state program for the Reconnecting Communities Grant Program.
So the state program is the highways, the boulevards. I have not. I do know that there've been some conversations about that. Gretchen Chavez is actually leading that effort, working with our planning folks, and so there is discussions on any of the specifics of that. But I think one of the things that they're looking at is making sure that that either the state funding will be used to match the federal with the Reconnecting Communities. I think they're looking at fewer projects than many, because obviously we want to make sure that you're applying this type of funding to locations that will make a difference. So there's a lot of things that are discussing as far as how that's going to happen. But there's so yeah, if you have any more questions on the state side, please reach out to Gretchen Chavez on that.
And our next question, how do you know where our HPB bridge project is in the queue? We are currently in RW phase and hoping to get started with construction next year. Is there a priority list available?
Good question. So if you want to know about everything about priorities, your first stop is to read chapter 6. You know, even though I don't tell you, you know, go read the book, but we lay out on how projects get into the program. There's a priority. So if you've got yourself a scour bridge that is heavily scoured, that's priority 1 to get into the program. When you've into the program, then there's a priority on funding. So if you've got, you could be at the end of the line, you could be a new project, but if you're ready next year and you're ready to go, you get to jump to the head of the class, so to speak, and you're ready. And so yeah, if your project has gone from the right-of-way phase and you're ready to list, that will become a priority, I think, a 1. And then if you're in construction, it's a priority 0. So there's a priority system that my team applies and where to put the funding on projects. And so that's why I said it's very important to make sure that you report accurately. Don't be overly optimistic, but don't be pessimistic as well. Because if you're not ready to go, then that, you know, we'll have funds ready for projects that are ready to go and ready to use those funds. Because what happens if you don't come in for your funds, then you actually get put at the end of the line. We'll take your project and we'll put it in the outer, into the, you know, and we're playing by our rules that we've implemented with the advisory committee. So we put some penalties if you don't come in for your funds when you've asked for them. And so those are within our guidance. And those are something that we're trying to incorporate. We did some reforms. And so that was part of the reforms on the delivery requirements that we've incorporated within the program.
Great. Linda.
Hey, I'd like to add to what Robert said. We have about 750 projects in the queue, and with the prioritization list, the HBP Advisory Committee, that's like another 40 to 80 projects getting added into the program. We're also hiring up. We just got 1 new person at the beginning of August. So we've got some other people we're hiring. So the queue is extremely full and we're trying to get through it as fast as possible.
Thank you so
Thanks.
much, Linda. Appreciate that. It looks like we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. The next question is, when will the railroad crossing elimination application start again after September 30th, 2022?
Well, like anything else, I would take this year's notice and maybe add 1 more year, and maybe that could be next year's notice. That we don't have any say on that. All those notices come from the US DOT. And so, yeah, I would go to their website, and I think there's always a contact person to contact, and I would that'd be the best route of maybe when that next NOFO comes out. That might be I'd recommend to go there and find out.
Okay, we have 1 more question. If the project was funded by HBP for the design and the right-of-way, could you receive funding for construction from a BIP?
From the BFP?
Oh, yeah. BF.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. If you saw my notice, we are taking those. I mean, it doesn't matter where they're all federal funds. And there's, you know, as long as there's the match for the local match or whatever, if, you know, depending on your project, you know, you don't need to be concerned about where the funds come from. But yeah, the way we're going to be attacking the BFP is any project goes into construction, any projects that have been AC'd, you're going to see BFP funds applied to those projects. So yes. What I'm saying is we can mix and match funds. We don't have to stay with NHPP and then stay with NHPP. That's there's nothing out there saying we've got to stay with that color of money. We can go with other federal funds to fund your project.
Fantastic. So I just want to invite you and your support team who have been answering questions to put your contact information in the chat so that if people have additional questions, they know who to reach out to. And thank you so much to everyone on your team. And Robert, that was an amazing presentation. Lots of information for us to consider. And so with that, it is now 9:40 and we are going to take our 10-minute break. So thank you again, and we'll see you in 10 minutes. Good morning and welcome back to Local Assistance Day, the statewide webinar. We are now going to continue with our next guest speaker, Felicia Sam, who is going to be talking about Agency Risk Assessment Program, Construction Manager, General Contract, Project Bundling, and Partnering. So welcome, Felicia. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday. I'm going to bring up my PowerPoint here. Hopefully everyone can see that.
Looks great, Felicia.
Thank you. But I'm in presenter mode. I can't see you guys, so thank you. Okay, so my name is Felicia Haslam, and I'm going to give you an update on our Agency Risk Assessment Program, aka Agency Certification. I know I brought this to you guys probably a year ago to kind of give you the vision on what we're going to tackle. I also have Paul Bowe here with me today. He's our retired annuitant. He's kind of the mastermind, brainchild, should I say, behind this whole effort. And he's been doing a lot of efforts. So I'm going to go over that real quick. So the risk assessment. So we're all about assessing risk, right? So we are delegated oversight responsibilities from FHWA. So we have a certain responsibility that we're required to do. And we also look at the local agencies because we're here to help a local agency. So we're all about how do we assess risk and how do we report on how we assess risk. So there's two things that we're required to do under 23 USC, United States Code 106, and that is to ensure an agency has an adequate project delivery system and a financial management system that can manage their funds. So we do a pre-award audit when an agency comes in the very beginning only once to assess their financial management system. But what we found out, and I'll go through this a little bit later through our pilot program, is sometimes agencies or maybe whoever's in that position now is unaware of what that requirement is. The other part of that USC requirement is to ensure agencies have a project delivery system. We don't do that now. As far as I know, as far as I can see, we don't really have a way to assess. So we have been approached by FHWA that says, hey, how do you measure that? How do you monitor that? How do you assess the risk? So that's what we're here to tackle is, okay, let's assess risk. But we also know when we assess risk, we have to be prepared to, okay, this agency has a gap in this area. What can we offer to fill that gap? So that's also part of the component of this program. So we see there's benefits on both sides, right? Because we're kind of in the middle. So we want to ensure that we can, yes, we can meet the CFR, and we do ensure that agencies have those systems in place. We also want to assist agencies that need that support, and maybe they're in an underserved community, because that's a big one, right? For Caltrans now is equity. How do we not only identify those agencies, we have to have a way to assess them, and how do we help them? Because once an agency gets a project that's programmed, they come in for funding. It's almost too late. So we want to be on the forefront and go, okay, how do we first off help the agencies before it's programmed, when it's programmed, when they come in for authorization, and all through the process until closeout. So that's kind of what we're looking at all across the board. And I'll go over some measures that we are putting in place right now to be able to do that. We also need to balance the resources that we have and help the agencies with the resources they have, because I don't think resources are just plentiful right now. So we have to do a risk-based program, especially with over about 650 agencies doing projects. There's no way we can handhold every single agency and have that direct contact. So we also want to provide, and we see a big gap in our training. So our training we want to have is web-based, and I'll go over what training we're considering. And then just overall efficiency, we want to help agencies deliver projects because that is also a number one thing that we have been asked to help agencies with this big federal process that's kind of convoluted. How can we make it easier for agencies? So currently we have a tier system. Again, this is just a very high level because we need to have a way to go, okay, if an agency is, maybe we feel maybe they should deliver projects, agency honestly have come to us and said, if we'd have known the requirements ahead of time, we wouldn't have asked for that money. So we have to be able to assess that and go, okay, so if they're in tier 1, what can we have in place? And then we're looking at, most agencies will be in tier 2. But again, what do we need to improve in our guidance and our process to help these agencies? Because they struggle too. And then of course, if you're in the top tier, maybe those agencies can help us develop things for other agencies. And I'll go over that in a minute. So we have 4 major components. We've had this since inception. We're continuing with that. We have mandatory training section. We have, of course, how do we assess risk? And I'll go over those categories. Our risk-based monitoring and oversight. So as everyone knows, we have started the getting all of our monitoring critical dates together. We've done training on critical dates. I did an efficiencies report a couple months ago to the RTPA on the efficiencies that DLA has done and what we're planning in the future to help agencies. And then, of course, recertification, and I'll go over what that means. So mandatory training. And the reason we have mandatory training first is, like I mentioned, we've had some agencies tell us, well, if I would have known ahead of time, I wouldn't have went for this type of funding. So we want to have it to where an agency can take a basic training on what the program is, what it can offer, what high level or critical items that an agency needs to know in order to deliver. And we have implemented a new pre-award audit that is very simple in comparison for state projects, just to assess agencies to make sure they have the minimum. And we've had agencies say, I'm out. So that kind of gave us a red flag. If those agencies are saying they're out on a simplified version, there's no way they could pass our pre-award audit. So what can we offer to those agencies? So the idea of the mandatory training is what we found in the pilot program. There's a couple of key items that agencies feel that, oh yeah, I don't understand that. Can you provide more information? And one was the responsible charge. Like, what does that mean? An agency will say, well, I'm responsible for everything. But do you actually know what that means and what is everything? So once we kind of went over it, and we found that that was a big gap. That's a big starting point. So once they do the mandatory training, that would be, in our minds, a simple training just to get the idea out there. And some agencies, if they're good to go, maybe they're in that top tier to say, yep, I got it, I'm good. I understand the requirements. They don't need to go into the individualized trainings, but we are hoping to have on-demand individualized trainings. A lot of these things that we have in this program has to be set up in order for us to roll out the program. So we have to have the on-demand training set up, ready to go. We have to have a way to capture the data. So that's what we're working on. All these other efforts we have going on is to roll it into, okay, how do we have a complete program to help agencies? So under the training, of course, we have from project beginning to closeout. So we'll have before a project's even programmed, like can you understand the funding basics, the FTIP, and how the program or projects get programmed. And then, of course, throughout the whole process, we'll have training available. We noticed that an agency, they may take the federal aid series once a year, but they're not really ready for the different components yet. So if we have it on demand, when they're ready to do their DBE, they can go to the DBE training. When they're ready to do their closeout, they can go look that up ahead of time. So that's one big part of this program that we see is definitely a need. And could we do it without the program? We absolutely could. But again, we're looking at resources. We're looking at total package. We're asked by even our management, okay, what's your plan for this? So this is our plan. We've also gone over the invoicing with agencies. That's a kind of a big component, understanding that process. So the main part that is used for us to assess risk is our application. So currently we have it in Excel, but again, we're not willing to roll out the program until we have an easy way to capture the data and present the data and have a, a complete picture of what's going on with an agency and their project before we roll out the program. So we are looking at Smart Sheets to have, this is a big one for us because we really want direct access from the agency. We want the agency to be able to go right in, not have to fill out a PDF and send it to us. We want direct input from an agency on our program. So we're looking at putting in Smart Sheets before we roll out the next stage on having agencies actually fill it out. So we're looking at 4 items in that application in order to assess risk. Again, once we assess risk, what do we have in place to help the agencies with that risk? So I'll go over these in a little bit more detail. We have key staff qualifications. We realize when an agency comes in, it's those people that are filling this out. That's why we have it in place to say, hey, annually, take a look. If your key staff has changed, let us know, because we can actually go over some requirements that they need to understand in order to do projects. If they're good to go, great. If not, then we have resources that they can look into. Some agencies have turnover, and we saw it even in our pilot program. We had agencies that turned over. So we had to, we need to go back in and say, okay, you're new people. Do you understand your roles? We also look at project delivery history, project delivery system, and then we have a civil rights just in that application in order to assess risk. So on key staff qualifications, we have some key items. Again, one is responsible charge. That's kind of a big one. We do see that often in audits as well. Who's going to be responsible for these items? So that's I would say first and foremost training. So an agency understands that person or people, what they need to do. We're also going to look at project engineer, again, invoicing. Do the invoicing staff understand what needs to go on? And we're going to look at policy and procedures on how to do, an agency does invoicing. And of course, we have the other, the Title VI information in there and environmental right away. So the idea is when we do our Smart Sheet, that right away, our right away staff will also have access, because they're going to certify people to do certain things for right of way. They can see who's certified in our system. That also serves as a double check for us to report to FHWA to say, hey, we not only assessed them here, we double checked it here. It's the same people. It also helps because when an agency comes in to do a project, we can look and go, okay, you're going to need a person that's certified to do this, or you're going to need a consultant ahead of time, because that's one thing that kind of trips agencies up is, oh, I wasn't aware of the qualifications needed for either right away or when they do some environmental work. And we want to make sure that they understand. So we also have project delivery history that we look at. Reason is because some agencies may not do a project for years. So that's kind of big for us to say, ooh, okay, they probably have new people. They haven't done projects for years. That's when we need to say, maybe we need to engage a little bit more on this. So we're going to look at, they may have done a sidewalk project in the past, and now they come in for a bridge. So that's kind of our red flag to go, hey, we need to engage probably the bridge program. We need to engage, the NEPA folks to help these agencies understand their project scope and their delivery. So that's why we look at project history to kind of assess what's the risk on the agency. We also have project delivery tab, or the delivery system tab, I should say. So we're looking at, this is more agency specific. So what we've done currently is we've looked at certain policies and procedures that agencies have in place. And I think that's a good practice because we do have certain requirements for policy and procedures, such as the A&E, invoicing, and we want to make sure that the agencies have, first off, a good policy and procedure in place. And we've looked at contract change order policies. So we want to ensure that not only do they have a good policy and procedure in place, one that meets the CFR and our expectations, it also, we will have a copy of that. So any new people that come into their agency, we can say, here's the policy and procedures you have in place. Do you understand what these policy and procedures are? They're all up to date, and help them with that process. So we see this as something that's not going to necessarily change for an agency unless we have a change in our guidance and policy and procedures. Then we can reach out and say, hey, these probably need to be updated. So that's why we have that tab. We also have in our risk assessment is the civil rights component. So we want to ensure that agencies have what they need up front. This has actually been very helpful because we had a couple of agencies that didn't have their updated DBE and ADA information. They didn't have an updated QAP and they were coming in for funding. So that would have actually held up their funding if they didn't have those in place. We were also be able to quickly assess if they had, funds that were expired. So that's what we do when we assess. Again, we're looking at Smartsheet direct entry so we can have that data. Now, we're also looking at how do we realize once an agency comes in, they get their funds, it's usually, okay, see you later, and they close the project. We may not assess them until an audit, which is way too late, in my opinion. It's reactive, not proactive. So we want to be proactive from the beginning, but we also want to have a way to assess them throughout their project. And again, this needs to be quick. It needs to be risk-based. How do we get that data and how do we analyze what's going on? We want to catch an agency. If their project's going sideways, then we should be able to see that on our monitoring. As most people know, we've had the PED, the project end date tool. That's our first step in how do we get these critical dates out. It's a pretty convoluted adventure to get the data from all of our different data sources and roll it into one. But that's our first attempt to say, okay, how do we want it laid out? How do we want to see it? And how can we monitor agencies? Our next step is adding those other critical dates and then eventually the project milestones. So an agency can manage their projects and we can help them with that. So that's our vision on the monitoring. Again, we are going down that path, figuring that out at the same time. So all of these things are kind of working in tandem to say, okay, we know this is a component we need. We have to have this at our fingertips to know maybe what area has a lot of funding going to it. That's a risk. What areas have underserved communities? That could be a risk, but we need to be able to jump in and identify that because, if an agency fails, we fail. So within that monitoring program, we'll also have, in addition, if an agency has had an audit, if they have single audit report requirement issues or any type of process or program review that was done and they have deficiencies, we'll also be able to hopefully put that in our complete data set and we'll be able to manage agencies a little bit better. I think it's easier to see what's going on when we have the data. It's also easier to justify when we need to have resources and help the agencies out. So on both sides, we're looking at an agency role, our role. So perform the risk assessment, agencies that need it. That's why we need a risk program to legitimately assess an agency. We can't just say, hey, you need it, and agency be like, I don't need it, or an agency, I need it, versus another agency. So if we have a way to assess that, we can absolutely jump in. We can review documents or have things in place to assist with that. We've started the project delivery status meetings this last year to try that out, to gear up for project delivery. How do we help project delivery? It's worked out well. We'd like to expand that to have agencies. So we'll know agencies because we have data to show, okay, agency needs help in this area, and we can set up those special meetings to help agencies. We also have, contract change order. We've looked at policy and procedures on that. Maybe for an agency that has no idea or needs that support, we can do that. And then, of course, track all expenses and budgets. So an agency will be responsible to do that. Recertification. You might be thinking, do we need recertification? Yes. And then here's why. So every 3 years, we'd like to do a self-assessment. We don't have that all laid out yet on what we would ask, but it would probably be similar to the beginning. And are there any changes? We do ask that the agency, when a new person comes in, update this. So that way we can reach out and say, hey, what do you need? We also want to ensure that if there are any deficiencies found in any of our reviews or audits, that those were taken care of. Some agencies just don't have the support to be able to adequately address those. And then it would be a self-assessment because we're looking at, again, risk. But once we identify a risk, how do we handle that? It'll be a self audit. And then of course, if there's any changes, let us know, because that's where we come in to go, hey, we have resources to help you with that. This is just a visual to show how that would roll out, where an agency conducts the self-assessment. If there's any deficiencies, then let's get them corrected and the agency's good to go. We're looking at, upwards to 6 to 8 months, maybe, to do the whole thing. Doesn't stop your project. Projects still keep going. Agency still comes in. Again, we're here to assess the risk and identify gaps and be able to fill those gaps. So we do have rough timelines on what we think it would take in order to do that. We would like to have our risk assessment program up and running within the next year. So we have to have all these other components ready. So without these other components, it's not an efficient program. And we realized that. So we had agencies that volunteered, that came in and helped us kind of establish some things that we definitely need to do. And then we'd like to look at all the other agencies and have all the agencies by 2025 that are doing projects go through the program so we can help with the risk. So what we find in our beta program or pilot program, we basically found some risks that they had within their individual agencies and helped them with that. We also had recommendations on what they could do. So one of the ideas is, with the Smart Sheet, we have the ability to auto-generate emails. So one of the gaps that we see that we'd like to close is an agency to have a generic email that the invoices go, or the emails go to. So we actually had agencies set up a generic email box, say, hey, everything goes to here, because when it goes to a person, it doesn't necessarily get disseminated, and that person, is no longer there. So that's one thing that makes it, I think, easier in the long run. So that was one improvement that we saw. We also made recommendations, other recommendations on improving, like I said, their change order, invoicing, A&E, responsible charge, policy and procedures. And then we looked at monitoring, like components of what we needed to add to the monitoring and what were the common risks, such as I mentioned responsible charge, was one of those common risks that we found. So what is our strategy? And here's where the second item comes in, of the peer exchange. So I want to throw out and encourage everyone to attend the peer exchange. And here's why. FHWA has been gracious and so excited that California has reached out to help put in components to help agencies. And the risk assessment, or the certification is what they call it nationwide, has been around. Other states are doing it. The partnering, bundling, certification is all part of the Everyday Counts initiatives. So we're trying to hit as many of those items. We've also had in the past agencies and districts reach out and say, hey, some agencies just, they cannot do the project, but they need this project. Can we encourage partnering? Well, we can encourage partnering, but what does that actually mean? And what are the resources to partner? So that's where this peer exchange comes in. We have agencies that are partnering now. So you'll hear from those agencies. We have other states coming that have done bundling and partnering, and they'll go over the successes. And one of those, I'm not going to go into detail, but the CMGC, the construction manager general contractor method, and the design build, both in California, I believe need legislative approval. However, what we saw was the tribes and the states that were really successful in doing this bundling used that CMGC method. It was one of the keys to their success. So I don't want to leave that out of the alternative contracting method. So consider that. It might need to come from, a level such as the RTPA to change that, or to get those approved, but I think it's worth it. And then the peer exchange will also have some pros and cons of partnering. So back to the partnering, we a couple of years ago went down the path of, hey, how can we encourage partnering? What resources do we have? We kind of hit a roadblock on some of the agreements and how that would work out. But again, we have a couple of agencies that have done it. They have graciously offered to help us with agreements, and FHWA again has offered assistance to California for these efforts. We also, our strategy is that we really want agencies to understand how to deliver federal aid projects, because that's kind of our number one thing we hear is, oh my gosh, it's a convoluted process. If you don't understand it, it's daunting. So we want to help streamline and understand, and it takes input from agencies and groups like this. We also want to be proactive. Again, we feel that we are reactive. So we want to change that. We want to be proactive and have risk-based, easy ways to capture and identify risks and be able to report on that to not only management, but FHWA to say, here, we can see the trends. We can see where this is going. We can jump in. We have resources to help. We also can advocate for resources if we have a structure in place to say, this is what it's going to take. Now that it's stood up, what resources do we need for districts to help, shepherd this and actually implement it? And then, of course, the monitoring and oversight component is huge. That's where we see the biggest need is to be able to have this data, not only for us, but for the agencies, because we have a lot of dates agencies are supposed to adhere to. So in the peer exchange, we will go over what is project bundling and how to choose projects for bundling, and then what resources are available. We hope to get maybe some MPOs or agencies that want to do a pilot. We do have an agency that's doing bundling right now, so they'll be talking about how they do bundling. So it's kind of cool. And then also, again, the partnering and what tools can we put in place to help agencies partner. So that's what we're really looking at, is actually have something from this peer exchange that we can actually say, hey, here's what we have to offer. So I'll put the registration link in the chat. If you want to attend the peer exchange, again, it's October 4th and 5th virtually. And we'll be talking about bundling and partnering. And that's all I have for the update on the program. If you have any questions, please let us know. Again, Paul's here and he's got a lot of information on the program. So are there any questions?
Yeah, we actually have 5 questions in the Q&A. So I'll go ahead and start. The first one, it looks like, will the on-demand training for each individual topic be free? The training portal has a few video recordings. Will it expand? Oops, someone just answered that. Okay.
Yeah, so any training that we have that we offer to the agencies, we envision it, yes, it would be free. So that's part of what needs to happen. Wait, what was that other part? Maybe I hit my thing too fast.
No, I know. The question disappeared for me. Hold on just a second. Let me see. It said, will it be expanded to include all topics? That was the other part.
Yep. And that's why we need input from groups like this to go, what topics do you struggle with? So we have some, but there may be some that we're not thinking about, or ones that could be a quick, 1 to 2 minute, like, hey, what's the, regulation on this, or how do we, so yeah, absolutely. That's the plan. Again, we have to look at resources and go, where's our training, office, where's our resources to put this training together? So that's kind of what we're struggling with as well. How do we actually get this done? But yeah, good question.
And how did they submit those topics if they have some to submit?
That's a very good question. So we are discussing that internally to have a way to be able to have those topics submitted through a portal that we can see. So you can submit them to your district, they'll submit them to us, but we want to have one place where everyone can see it and know what's been submitted. So, but you can always reach out to your districts and say, hey, we'd like to see this. They'll communicate it to us. Yeah, we just need to have a good place to have all those stored. So they're a priority.
Great. Next question. Will you also audit different districts, headquarter, to see how Caltrans staff, ROW, utility, environmental structures, help or stall getting local agencies through the process? Procedures and timelines vary widely when Caltrans staff changes.
So that's a good one. So I can speak for our office in implementation. I would expect that it would be what I would say, division wide, but we are looking at performance measures right now, measuring our performance on how we do business, how quickly can we get the submittals, how accurate are the submittals, where are our gaps, how quickly do we respond to agencies. So we are looking at those performance measures right now in our office. And I would expect that other offices are doing the same thing. I think that's been, brought up. But yes, ideally, we should be doing that as well. Because we need to be responsive and have a way to show that we're also effective in how we do business. So good question.
Great. Next question. Can you clarify, are all agencies required to go through the certification process?
Eventually, yes. So ideally, we'd start out with those that want to. Our inclination, what we kind of have experienced so far is agencies that struggle the most reach out the most because they don't understand the process. And then the agencies kind of in the middle have also reached out, but it's more improve the policy, the guidance, the procedures. But yes, we would expect all agency to go through the certification process. If you're an agency that is in that top tier that has no problems, it would be a quick, I'm going to fill this out. And then we'll meet with you. I mean, we met with our agencies for an hour. The first time got a lot of information. That may be all it takes is you to fill it out. And we get with the districts and say, hey, how is their performance? We'll look at all of our metrics. That's why we need metrics to have a pulse on where that agency's at. But so long answer, all of that, short answer, yes.
No, that's great. Thank you. So the next question is, I've heard the term responsible charge before and from you today, and I don't understand its use. Can you explain whether that term refers to a person or an agency? Please elaborate.
Yeah, really good question. And that's what we find as well, that agencies and people don't quite understand what that responsible charge is. So according to the federal CFR, an agency is required to have someone in responsible charge. So it doesn't mean that this person is the engineer for that agency. A lot of times it is the same. But, you know, if you have a big agency, there may be different people in responsible charge of different things. But the responsible charge is basically taking on the responsibility for the agency. So it applies to the agency. You have to have someone in responsible charge, but that responsible charge is a person. And what we find is they just have to understand their role. So if they're overseeing a consultant contract, it is, what is your role overseeing that? That responsible charge person should be sending in invoices, not a consultant. So I don't know if that answered the question, but that's probably one of our top trainings, is understanding what a responsible charge is, what they do. A little bit different than if you're out in construction and you're the RE. So some people kind of confuse that, but this is for the agency. An agency has to have a full-time person in responsible charge of the process.
It sounds like a designated person overall. Yeah.
A lot of times, yep.
Okay, great. And the next question, is Caltrans introducing a portal with all prerequisite trainings and ability to create an agency profile with connections to those staff or responsible charge personnel and projects delivered? Since there have been more rigorous upfront information required, it might be better for the agency to store them, improve them, and use for future project efficiency. That was a lot. Do you need me to repeat it?
Let me see here. Portal.
Yeah. Yeah. So is there a portal that you guys are introducing with all the prerequisite training and ability to create an agency profile to connect to those staff and responsible charge personnel?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's the idea behind having the smart sheet. Absolutely. So we want to have that where an agency can direct enter. They don't have to send any forms. That is the form. So and the idea is, and we're just starting this process, so I don't want to misspeak for the guys that are actually doing it, because you know I got my vision and they might be like, Flish, that's not even possible. But the idea is that yes, you will have the complete profile of that agency. So it should connect to everything that we have, like the critical dates, the functional units that we have here. And so it might be better for the agency to store them, improve them, and use for future projects. So I'm not sure I understand that part of the question, but an agency will, anything they provide to us, an agency will have on hand. It's just what we found was that agencies will come in and say, oh my gosh, do you have our like consultant in a management support role documentation or our conflict of interest for our city? Because they don't know where their copy's at. Or we could say, yes, we do, right here. So let's, ensure you understand that. So that's why we want to have a copy as well. So that way new people, it's mostly for new people that come in an agency, and we can say, here's what you have, go find it. Because a lot of times agencies, their city clerk might have it, but that person doing that job may not have that. So I'm not sure I understand the whole context of that question. So I don't know if that person, I don't know if we want to ask them in detail. Maybe Paul can help me out. Maybe Paul's seeing something different in that question.
Yes, hi everybody. This is Paul. So this, we understand that one of the challenges is to get the information to us and for review in a timely manner, and also to store data and to some extent to analyze the data. And so the smart sheet process is for the local agency to enter the data and to be submitted through the web. And then we will have certain responses that will be done through AI, for example. So certain questions, certain responses maybe require additional information. So if you submit to us the date of the agreement that is we see that's out of date, and we can provide the feedback rather quickly, for example. That the whole process here is automated the process as much as possible and allow us to local agencies as well as Caltrans to do the data analysis. I don't know if that answered the question.
Thank you, Paul. And please let us know by asking any additional questions using the Q&A if that didn't fully answer your question. Okay, the next question we have is the Caltrans financial document review process for issuing Caltrans acceptance ID numbers to firms a part of this LPA certification?
Right. So, so we are going to work with, if I'm understanding this question right, audits and investigations is where you got to go through now to get that, right? The acceptance IDs. So we are going to work with them on what we capture here. So I'm not sure. So if they've already captured some of the information, then absolutely we'll use it. So we should be coordinating with all the functional units within Caltrans to say, hey, here's what we have. What do you have? Because they'll let us know if something needs to be updated on their end and we can capture it, or we vice versa. So I don't know if that answered your question, but that's a good comment to ensure that we do include that in this to make sure that we have that covered. And and before this is rolled out, it'll have a period of here's what we're thinking, here's what we have preliminary in place. And that's where comments like this are really good to go, hey, you forgot about this, or consider this because I think it overlaps, or it could mean the same thing. So that's that's a really good comment.
Next question, you mentioned that this is a pre-award audit. Are there cases where a post-award audit would be allowed due to the timing of urgent projects and emergencies, funding requirements, etc.?
So our process isn't the pre-award audit process, but we have a pre-award audit process that agencies need to go through. This is more assessing risk on an individual agency. They're kind of two separate things because a pre-award's done when an agency comes in the beginning before they even start their very first project. So we still have to have that in place unless you're talking about a pre-award on the consultant side, which is a little different. So are there cases where a post-award audit would be allowed? So if it's a brand new agency, no, I've never seen that, honestly, because once the agency gets the money, it's hard to go backwards. But we did, as I mentioned, implement the streamline just to make sure agencies have the basics. So that could be a possibility depending on the type of funding. So I don't know if I answered that question totally. So a little bit different strategies on what this program is, but that will take the pre-award audit information. That's really good information and put it in this program. But all agencies need to have a pre-award audit in order to get a master agreement to do business with us. And not saying they couldn't roll in at the same time, but we wouldn't require this risk assessment to be done if they're doing the pre-award. We wouldn't expect that to be done before they start their project necessarily. So maybe that's where that comes in of, if you're doing a pre-award audit, we check certain things. That's our process. You can get your funding, especially if it's emergency or whatever, but I would think an agency would want to have the risk assessment done anyway to see where your gaps are at. So we're trying to make it flexible, where if you already have funding, then we got to do what we got to do. But if you don't have funding yet and you're curious at what it's going to take, that's different. And I would say, yes, come in and go through at least the preliminary to see if you can successfully deliver a project and what do we need to put in place right up front for you. So I think it's flexible, and it would probably be case by case, but we haven't had an agency. Yeah, usually they've gone through the pre-award. That's just, they have to have a master agreement to do business with us. So.
Great. Thank you. And our next question is, are the LPA self-assessment resources available online?
They will be. Yeah. So this is part of our outreach to say, hey, here's where we're at with the program. It's still in its, I'm going to say infant stages, where we're trying to get all this stuff together, only because we're looking at, we went down the partnering, the bundling. How do we help agencies in the very forefront? We're hoping to get some MPOs to be champions to say, oh, okay, we can help analyze and assess the project delivery, maybe not for the program delivery of the funding, and then it moves on to project delivery. But that's kind of a key component, is being able to be upfront and catch, agencies up front on what they need. But yes, everything will be available online. Our vision is to have it in one area. Right now, our resources are kind of scattered out on different websites, different web pages, which makes it hard for agencies, even if they're, resources, different training. I mean, some agencies were not even aware of some of the training that we have because it's on different pages. So our vision is that when you come in for assessment, our training and everything will be all linked under one place an agency can go to for assistance.
A follow-up question on the on-demand training. Is there tracking so you can see how many professionals attend the training and who is asking for the training?
So on the on-demand, the idea would be that they do get some type of certification at the end to show that they've done it. We also have a record that that they've done it for a couple of reasons. One is if they do get questioned, or if they get an audit or whatever, then we can show that, yes, they took the training. It also shows us who, because if they have a new person, then we can reach out and go, oh, you have a different person. Are you aware of this training? Your predecessor or someone else in your agency has taken it. So to answer that question, yes, our vision would be we need to have that capability. So on the request the training, I'm not sure. That would be maybe a Sac State or Sherry question. I think they track that now on those. So yeah, if you take the on demand, then it should register. You should get a certification at the end that will have your information on it.
Yeah. I would like to add, Felicia, this is Paul. So we talk about personal responsible charge, the key position in the federal delivery process. This person will also be keeping track of the training because this one of the critical element of the qualification process is the meeting the understand the project delivery process and have the meeting the minimum qualifications. Along with understand what needed to be done to deliver a project, the person also the person responsible charge. We also need to keep track of the training as well along with us. So if one staff is happened to be leaving or then somebody else need to be brought on board, then the person responsible charge need to make sure that the new staff need to be trained. So that kind of along the vision that we're trying to establish. That's part of the smart sheet system.
Thank you so much to both Paul and Felicia for this great information. It is now 10:35 and we are scheduled for a 5-minute break. And so again, thank you so much for this great information and we'll see you back in 5 minutes. And welcome back, everyone. It is 10:40, and I would love to introduce James Peralt with Department of Transportation. Welcome, James.
Hey, good morning. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hey, great. Thank you. So yeah, good morning, everybody. My name is Jim Peralt. I am the District Local Assistance Engineer in District 6 in Fresno, and we serve the southern portion of the Central Valley with the 5 counties and 52 local agencies here. It's my honor and privilege today to introduce staff from Tulare County. We've worked with them for a number of years, and they have a long history of process improvement and a culture of excellence at their agency. And they were asked to present today on the secrets of project completion. And I can tell you that, as a district DLA here, we've worked with them for a number of years. With all their staff, have gone through lots and lots of projects with them, gone through lots of reviews with Federal Highways. They always perform very well on their projects and through those reviews. And so, it's my privilege to introduce them today. So today we'll hear from both Hernan and Carla. Hernan's the chief engineer, and Carla is their staff services analyst. So with that, I will turn the time over to Carla, I believe, or maybe Hernan will speak briefly.
Thank you, Jim. As Jim mentioned, my name is Hernan Beltran. I'm chief engineer. I've been in Tulare County for over 14 years already. This has been one of the best places best job that I ever had. I've been very fortunate to work with a talented group of people. A little bit about Tulare County. If you guys know where Tulare County is, we're in the Central Valley. Our county size is approximately 4,800 square miles, roughly the size of Connecticut, the state of Connecticut. Our population is just a little bit under 500,000. We have 8 unincorporated cities in the county, with Visalia being the largest city and also our county seat. We have 75 unincorporated communities throughout the county. We're home to the giant sequoias and the Mount Whitney, the highest peak in the continental U.S. Our economy is predominant ag. We're one of the top 3 counties in the state. We're the 6th largest road network in the state. We have over 3,000 miles of centerline miles roadway that we maintain. And we also, my team or our team here at the Public Works team at Tulare County consists of approximately 50 engineers, technicians, and support staff. So that's our size. With that, I'll turn it over to Carla. She'll be the main presenter, and we'll go with that.
Thank you, Jim and Hernan. So as we said earlier, we're a local agency at the county level. So we were asked to provide you guys a few key points that have helped us personally in Tulare County, where we've been able to reach project completion successfully. And there's many ways of achieving that, but hopefully our process can aid everybody in some shape or form. Don't think that we know all, because we don't. We're aware of that. But hopefully some of our stories and some of these examples that Hernan's going to provide are able to resonate with some of you and maybe help you in some shape or form. So in order to start off, we're actually going to ask you guys a poll question. We wanted to ask the group a question. So hopefully we can get that up. So the question says, how many successfully completed projects has your agency had in the past 5 years? So to give a little insight while you guys are thinking, what a successful completed project means is that you've received your E76 for each phase. You've submitted a final billing, a final invoice. You've also submitted your final report of expenditures, and you've received a final voucher date from headquarters. So I'm going to give you guys a few seconds there to answer that question for us.
We have about 100 responses so far.
Okay, that should be good.
And we're still moving. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have
Okay.
participation. That's good.
Yeah. 124, 25. Give it another 30 seconds.
And this is just going to help us have some insight in what areas of our discussion we should emphasize, which ones we don't need to go so in depth. So hopefully we can see the results in a few seconds.
Yep. Yep. We're at about 139 responses. It's about 49%, 140. Okay. Yep. I think we can go ahead and close it now. We have about 140. Whoop, wait, a couple more people are going in. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
All right. Let's see the results.
So about 45% of you do about had 5 projects completed, and then another 34 about 10 or more projects. So that's good. It means we're getting to the finish line, which is the point. The plan and our presentation is going to be a bit brief, but we just want to make sure that there are some takeaways at the end. So our presentation, we developed the 4 C's. So hopefully something sticks of the presentation. So our next slide shows the 4 C's. So it's going to be communication, collaboration, carefulness, and consistency. So each of the slides are going to give you a few bullets of how we do it in Tulare County and hopefully how they can benefit you as well. So we know that some agencies might be already doing some of these things. They might be already in place, but hopefully we can give you some ideas of how to maybe improve them or even implement them if you don't have them already. And then Hernan's going to be chiming in throughout the presentation to give you some of these real world examples and the stories that we've had here, and to show you why we think it's important that you implement the 4 C's in order to help the rest of the agencies get to that project completion. So to start off, it's going to be communication. So we know that communication can be done in a variety of ways. So it can be done over the phone, it could be done in person, virtually, like we're doing right now. Communication is just key. It needs to happen. And so what we do here at Tulare County is we try to include everybody, all of these stakeholders from the beginning, because this is going to ensure that there's a good perspective, there's a good overview of the project in general. So we also like to meet early on with any type of affected property owners. That way, if let's say there is some type of resistance for a project, we're able to nip in the butt any type of resistance, or we try to get their perspective ahead of schedule to hopefully maybe we can make adjustments. Maybe there's an adjustment we need to make in design. We're able to do that early on and not make any delays later on. And also, being a part of a project from the start and being still in communications with the project all the way to construction until it's finished, we feel that it definitely helps the attitude of our staff and motivation, because you're able to see that, you know, there is an end result. You're not just stuck with one part of the project. And being that we're a smaller agency, we like to consider ourselves a team, right? So we know that our agency is a team, that we're not, you know, just divisions, departments, everybody's a whole. And personally, our county, we do have it easy in the sense that we are able to see, you know, cross-functioning dynamics in all of our projects. And also this ensures that we do make it to the finish line and that we do meet that end goal of having a project be successful and actually get completed. Hernan, anything to add?
Yeah, thank you, Carla. Yeah, we've been very fortunate, as mentioned. You know, we have a talented group of staff here at Tulare County. When we first initiate a project, we typically have roundtable meeting, you know, just to go over the project scope in detail, and you know, with all the stakeholders. We bring everybody to the table. We bring the right-of-way unit, we bring our utility unit, our surveyors, our construction management team, and even our planning division. People who are going to be doing the CEQAs, the environmental for us. During the meeting, we go over project schedule and any possible hurdles that might affect project delivery. Throughout the course of the project, we also have periodic meetings. It all depends on the need. Sometimes we meet sooner. We meet frequently, a weekly basis if we feel like there's any issues. But it's important that we meet as a team to ensure that we stay on schedule and avoid any potential delays, identifying potential delays that we were able to mitigate before any escalation. This just ensures that everybody is on board. So meetings are important, project meetings are important. We also find that one of the things that we find to be a key to a successful project delivery is early outreach. As Carla mentioned, you know, we like to reach out at an early stage of the project. We find that early outreach is the most efficient way of establishing contact and address property owners' concerns and needs. One example that I have is, you know, attending a community meeting in the Early Mart area. I don't know if you guys know Early Mart, but I remember going to the town hall meeting and, you know, presenting our sidewalk project. Initially, the project wasn't well received by the community. You know, let's face it, nobody likes change or to be inconvenient. So it's our opportunity to demonstrate to the community, like, we're here to support you guys. We're here to provide positive change to the community. We were able, through these outreach meetings, we were able to effectively communicate and demonstrate the importance of the project and the overall benefit to the communities. The meeting also helps establish contact with property owners at an early stage, allowing affected property owners to voice their concerns and provide valuable feedback, because some people just want to really be heard. They just want to say, they want to complain. And listening to people, it's a big factor. We also get feedback from them, things that the engineers didn't account for. So it's very important. Early outreach is very important for us.
Thank you, Hernan. And also, along with our second C, it is collaboration. So we do have knowledgeable staff, and we have staff that's trained and capable in any step of the process of our projects. So we do use consultants. We're not going to say we don't. We do. So sometimes, for workload purposes or for resource balancing. But we do have the right mix of knowledgeable people on staff that is able to handle any aspect of the entire project. So we don't have to rely on other services that are out of our control that sometimes might cause delays. So for example, if it's design, if it's environmental, right-of-way acquisitions, or even construction management, we do have people on staff who can quickly take on this role and actually move the project forward. So this independency doesn't limit us in having any lags or gaps in the project delivery. It just allows us to just keep moving. And if we do need to make adjustments, we can make it on the fly because we do have knowledgeable staff. And similarly to the previous point, we do try to train our team on the full scope of the project delivery. So we do have specialists. So for example, property specialists, and that they're experts in their certain aspect of the process, but they do understand the process of the whole project from start to finish, in the sense that everybody on our team has basic design features and elements. They understand them and they're able to contribute whenever we do have reviews. They're able to look at a plan, understand what the plan means, understand the different colors, things like that. They're able to read a plan even if they're not engineers or designers that made the plan. Hernan, anything to add?
Yeah, no, thank you, Carla. To add to what Carla was saying, we've been very fortunate to have a great team, and really is the great working culture that we have. Everyone in our team understands the common goal, which is project delivery. I feel like the established work culture has allowed our team to be versatile and adaptable to the agency's needs. So it's very important to have a great team. One example that comes to my mind is at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. We all remember what a challenge that was. First weeks, months, the uncertainty with COVID. Most of us were ready for remote work, at least in our agency. But however, we just having a strong, unified team made a huge difference for us. It allowed us to rapidly transition to a remote platform. The team was really ready to the team was very receptive to the transition and was able to quickly adapt to the remote setting, within a day of leaving the office. We were up and running the following day, being able to communicate, being able to continue our operation. So it's very important, that it's very important. I just really believe that having a great team, having a team with the right attitude makes a huge difference.
It does, Hernan. And now that we transition to, electronic and the digital, we do have 2 applications that we do use religiously throughout our agency. But before we give those away, we want to ask you a second question to see if maybe it helps and you give us an idea of what you guys use or what we use. So the second prompt question is, have you used or heard of Bluebeam? I don't know if anybody else out there knows what that means.
Yeah, it looks like there are. But we're getting a lot of responses very quickly here.
That's good. They're awake. I haven't bored anybody.
They are. We have about 140, 150 responses so far, and about 59% have heard of it.
Oh, that's great.
Good.
Yeah, we've got about 40%, 64 responses saying no, they've never heard of it or used it before. And then we have 2% says maybe, question mark. Okay. Yeah, so you've got about a 60-39 split there with a couple on the fence. Yep.
Okay. Well, to explain to those that don't know what Bluebeam is, it's an application that we use for all of our project reviews. So this project is something that we use to do our plan reviews and even document reviews. So it facilitates the process for us because it's a live document. So it allows several people to log in at the same time or at different times and comment on one document. So all of the comments are facilitated, they're streamlined, and it's not somebody where you have to wait for somebody else to review and then it's their turn. So all of this application was able to allow our process to be shortened. So our review time definitely shortened, and addressing any of these comments was streamlined because we didn't have to combine PDFs anymore or, try to convert it to Excel. This program does it all for you. So this is a program that we thought would be beneficial for others that haven't heard about it. So now our third question, hopefully our prompt question can go up, is, does your agency use Microsoft Teams? So we know that it's out there. It's been out there for a while, but we don't know if there's a lot of other agencies in the area that don't really use it. So we wanted to know if statewide anybody else does.
Well, we definitely have a lot of responses here, about 150 so far, and about 81% say yes.
That's great.
8% say kind of, maybe they don't use all the features and functionality.
Right.
And then you have about 10% that's saying no, that they don't. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, We used to not use Microsoft Teams, but then we transitioned, and now we start to use Microsoft Teams on a daily basis. It has a lot of features. It has chat features. It has a way to do sharing of also live documents, Word documents, Excel. You all can log in at the same time, comment. But it also has a pretty cool feature that we've been able to implement, is that it connects with Microsoft Planner. So this application connects with MS Teams, and it lets you task key people within a project. So it's a way for us to elaborate more on our collaboration, and it even helps us with our organizational skills, because at tasking at certain areas or certain stages of a project, you're able to keep the project moving forward, but you're also letting everybody know the step or the status of this particular project. Because if you task somebody, let's say that's a property specialist, the project manager is still aware that, hey, somebody tasked this property specialist to do a specific thing, and everybody is notified, because you could do it through a notification. You can get even a specific email that says, hey, you've been tasked. So it's just our way of being organized and making sure that everybody is aware of what's going on. Hernan, anything to contribute?
Yeah, no, at Tulare County, we're very strong supporters of professional development. Our engineers and support staff, I mean, in the lines of collaboration, are required to attend the federal Series A training. I think that's important, to be well aware of the requirements for a federal aid project. We highly encourage, and sometimes we make it a requirement for staff to attend several training courses. We really do take advantage of the tech transfer courses. I think those are great and valuable. Additionally, we also have internal training, which we do on a periodic basis. These type of trainings range from your typical going over county basic procedures, or any changes that we implement, to specialized topics in design, right-of-way, or in the environmental area. So we highly encourage your agencies to take advantage of any training opportunities available. Also, we believe that having in the collaboration area, we believe that having a great working relationship with your local assistance team is a great thing to do. We've been very fortunate to have a great local assistance team in District 6. Jim and his team have been great to work with. They're always helpful and available whenever, whether it's an email or a phone call. Very responsive. If your agencies don't reach out as often to your local agency, to your local assistance team, I highly encourage you to do so. They're really a great resource. So, and finally, in this area, if you're able to do so, I think participating in these type of trainings, or any webinars, seminars, or even statewide committees is important. We try to at our agency. We believe that we've been able to participate in various committees, such as the Highway Bridge Program. These type of participations allow us to offer our insight, what we learned, how can we make the program better as a whole, and at the same time, it allows us to learn new opportunities, or funding opportunities that our agency can take advantage of.
Exactly. Thank you, Hernan. And to move on with our third C, is carefulness. This one's an obvious one, but we wanted to give you a little elaboration of why we think it's important. We always try to be cautious with which projects we do end up applying for within the various funding programs that are available to us, because we don't like to try to force a project to a funding source just to meet certain eligibility requirements, because this in the end can be harmful to us. Because if we are careful, we'll be able to limit the need of any type of time extensions or long periods of inactivity. Let's say when nobody's working on the project, so you don't invoice, and then you get on the inactive list. So what we're wanting to do is try to avoid those long periods of inactivity. So we know that, for example, HSIP, Highway Safety Improvement Program, and ATP, the Active Transportation Programs, they have strict milestones and delivery dates that are required. So in order for us to do that project development and be careful, we try to explore those potential issues, because right-of-way acquisition could be a big one, could be a project delay. Even utility relocation can take longer than we anticipate. So we try to be proactive and we try to explore those potential issues even before we apply for the funding of the project. Hernan?
No, I mean, we've all been there. We all been there where we have to request time extension for various reasons. It just slipped through the crack projects. There's utility delays. At Tulare County, you know, we try to learn from our mistakes and we try to pay close attention to project selection here. We like to evaluate projects for construction feasibility and identify any potential issues that can affect project delivery. We believe that early investment in project development can assist in identifying project for appropriate funding opportunities. For example, in our county, we use our local sales tax. I don't know if you guys have local sales tax, but I mean, this is it provides flexibility to leverage projects as well as provide local match requirements. That's what we use it for. It also, this measure also provides the flexibility to provide early project evaluation for us. So it's been great for us. In some cases, even it provides the opportunity to fund projects that otherwise wouldn't be competitive under certain state and federal programs.
That's right. Thank you. And our last but not least, our fourth C is consistency. So here at Tulare County, we like to always strive to keep on track with our project schedules and to actually deliver on our milestones. So that's why we are constantly reviewing them. They get updated, and we like to keep the team in the know of what's happening with the project. If there is any delays that were unavoidable, we make sure that we communicate that with everybody. And those group meetings are a good way for us to be consistent and make the adjustments if we need to, and try to see if there's a way to talk out a delay and see if we could avoid it. Additionally, what we'd like to do when a project is moving from design to construction, we have a transition meeting. So this makes sure that everybody is on the same page and that the same message is being displayed and spoken to all of the affected parties, because a property specialist might have promised something to a property owner. We want to make sure that the contractor knows about it. Or, you know, might have been something that was spoken to utility company. We want to make sure everybody else knows about it. So if there was anything promised, we want to make sure we follow through. Also, we try to aim to learn from our mistakes. So we do debriefing meetings, occasionally, periodically, with all of the groups in the agency. So not just our engineers and our technical staff, but also our grants team, you know, our planning team. We do these debriefing meetings because we like to learn and review, you know, maybe there's an area of opportunity, something that was missed that we can capture the next time around. So Hernan, any closing words for the group?
No, I think, Carla, you pretty much covered it all. It's very important in the consistency area that we understand, you know, that not every project is the same, that there's always something new to learn, you know, from our experience, from every project experience. We also know that having that close team bond that we talked about, you know, having a great team is also great. We are able to share project success and struggles. I think that by sharing those, I mean, that's just what makes a difference. We learn and we grow from our experience. That's the key thing.
Exactly. So hopefully our 4 C's were helpful. So it was communication, collaboration, carefulness, and consistency. So hopefully they were able to help you. And we also included our emails at the end. So if anybody, you know, wants to reach out personally, you can, but not sure if there's any particular questions, Nicole.
Yeah, I was just going to remind everyone that if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A. Really wonderful presentation today. Very helpful. And I love the 4 C's. Great, great marketing.
Thanks.
But it makes it easy to remember, right?
Yes.
So I just want to check to see if anyone has any questions whatsoever for this team. There we go. We have one in the Q&A so far. So here it is. Can you discuss briefly on how you coordinate the CIP budget with the finance department? Who initiates the process? And do you have a 5-year CIP plan? Adopt an annual budget. So there's a lot there. So let's start with the first one. Can you please briefly describe, right, on how you coordinate the CIP budget with the finance department?
Okay, well, I'll try my best. You know, as an engineer, we're not accountants. So what we do every year, we tend to get together, establish our project. We do not have a 5-year CIP. We have what is called the County Transportation Improvement Program, which is our annual. We know the revenues coming in on an annual basis. We know that projects that have been awarded through the federal and state process, the programs. So we tend to bring it all to our board as a whole, typically the beginning of the year, the beginning of the calendar year, to be adopted. And this is where we list all of our projects, our plan work. But our plan work is typically program years out, right? We understand which projects will be ready for construction 2-3 years down the line. So we tend to program it all at once. And as far as accounting, working with our accountants, you know, we're one unit. We have quarterly meetings, and even before the budget's adopted, we sit down with our accounting division and kind of go over our budget. Say, here's our budget, here's all the projects, and we ensure that everything adds up. So they're aware of the projects. And then what we like to do here at Tulare County, once the board of supervisors adopt the project or adopt our annual program, we forward that information to our accountants, to the engineers, and everybody is well aware of what the plan is. That's our game plan for the following fiscal year. So hopefully that answered your question.
Okay, great. And if not, please feel free to add more questions in the Q&A. The next question, how do you keep the project team feeling responsible / accountable? And then it goes on to say, in our agency, the main project manager is pretty much the only one who is accountable because their name is attached to the project. All plan reviewers and other support departments, such as real estate, fiscal, etc., are not on the hook to be responsible. A lot of delays are due to internal team members not responding to requests on time. So how do you manage this process successfully?
Well, what we do have is we have constant team meetings, and in the group meetings that we do have, we make sure that we include everybody that needs to be accountable for. So we have the project manager, we have the project engineer, that, you know, the one that does the ins and outs of the project plans. We have our graphics team that's also involved. So if there's anything that needs to be added to the plan, our right-of-way team is also included in the same project meeting. And we have agendas, we have tasks. So there's always reminders, and, you know, names are attached to each specific task. So it's not like, okay, this is your project, you're the only one responsible. But we do include names of everybody else so everybody knows what they're responsible for, and we make sure that they're reminded of it as well. Hernan, anything?
No, I think that's a valid question. You know, as an engineer, you're the one stamping the plans, you're the one responsible, and sometimes it's very hard to get the feedback that you need, you know, to successfully complete a project. I believe that a lot of it is just the mutual respect, you know, within other teams, and say, hey, I really need your help. And that's where I say about having a great team makes a huge difference, because, you know, everybody understands a common goal. And this is not a one-person show. At least for us, it's not a one-person show. It's like, we're a team. If one fails, we all fail. So it's very important that everybody understands. It just really, it goes back to the work culture, I feel, you know, having the right team selected, choosing the right people, and you know what, reinforcing it. I think a lot of it is reinforcement. And I feel like there's software out there, like what Carla mentioned, you know, our Microsoft Teams. It's very important. You know, you could clearly see who's handed a task, And that's where reminders need to be sent. Typically, people work well with reminders. Nobody wants to be in the hot water. So I know we all get there where we tend to forget or so, but I think at the end of the day, our team is just, I mean, they're really responsive.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So the next question is, sounds like you have a full team of qualified individuals for project delivery on grant funded projects. Are you hiring?
We're always looking for great people. You know, if you guys want to work at Tulare County, we more than welcome. You guys have my information. Please send me an email with a resume. We're always looking for people. So.
There you go. All right. Next question. How do you deal with Caltrans internal conflicts, such as environmental, that want a small project footprint and traffic operations that may push for safety features, resulting in bigger projects?
Well, we've been very fortunate. I think the key really is, you know, we have a great team here. Our planners, our environmental planners are a great team. We try to evaluate initially. We evaluate this. You know, if you have any questions, that's where I say that the actual having that close connection, working relationship with Caltrans makes a difference. You know, reaching out to our District 6 team, say, hey guys, we have a project here. You know, we have a question. You know, being able to just answer those questions are, I mean, they're very helpful. So I strongly suggest reaching out. You know, early communication is very important. So if you guys feel that something's going to go sideways, I think that take advantage of that. Talk to your local assistants, talk to your planning, your environmental division. I think it's trying to get it resolved up front. I know that Caltrans, we've been there where we actually, you know, we're required to do more. You know, it happens. It happens to all. It's just trying to get that communication started at an early stage makes a difference.
Yeah, so I hear a couple of things, both building good collaborative relationships with Caltrans as a partner, and then being proactive and reaching out and asking questions, right? So that you can prepare for what might be changing along the way. Yeah, very good. And then we have our last question. Can you put deadline dates and auto reminder emails in Microsoft Planner?
You can. So in Microsoft Planner, at the beginning, when you create these task cards, it gives you a due date. So the due date, as it gets closer, it changes color, but once it gets past the deadline, it turned red. So you can do it that way. It gives you a highlight from your planner exactly. Also, something that I have personally on my team is that I use Power Automate. So you can create it to give you an actual reminder email as well. So it's something that you can incorporate separately from Planner to give you that reminder as well.
That's kind of an add-on feature.
Yes.
Right? Yes. Yeah. Great. Any other questions? I don't see any more in the Q&A. So I just want to thank you for a wonderful presentation. Very informative. Sounds like you're right. It's all about teamwork at the end of the day, right? Teamwork is the dream work. All right. Thank you, both of you. And we are now just about at the end of our session. I am going to welcome back Ryan Nimblock so that he can do our closing comments.
Well, yeah, I'm glad I got back in time. I did have to jump out just for a moment, but just wanted to thank everyone for joining and for all of the questions, and continue to submit questions if you have anything lingering or anything that comes up. And then just to reiterate, you know, the point of these trainings, these webinars, is to provide information that is both timely and useful, but also, you know, I know that many of our agencies have experienced turnover. So places where we may have knowledge gaps, do not be afraid to reach out to folks on the Caltrans team or to myself to say, hey, we would love to hear more about subject X or Y, even if it's something that is, you know, kind of an ongoing piece. So thank you very much. Really all I've got to say.
Great. Thank you, Ryan. I also want to welcome Dee Lamb, who has a couple of closing comments as well. Welcome, Dee.
Thanks, Nicole. First of all, thanks, Ryan, for this continued partnership with our RTPA team. And then also Kelly and team, thank you for always, putting together such a great training day. I did catch Tulare County. Can I say thanks to your team? I caught your presentation, and your 4 C's, definitely very enlightening. Here at Local Assistance, we just launched an organizational assessment into, a dive, and really from a staff level. Remember, like you said, it's the teamwork. So our approach was, how do we work with our staff to kind of instill a culture where you can see elements of that 4C practiced? So we're working on, very similar principles and cornerstones, like what you shared, Tulare County. I mean, I echo, and I think one of the big things, as you were speaking, one of the big things and objectives that we want to focus on is how do we strengthen relationships, but strengthen those relationships where we become more agile as an organization to respond to your needs. So by listening to the counties and cities and regions on your best practices helps us as a local assistance program assist better, look at need-based type of training. I think to your point, Ryan, continuing to have our agencies reach out regardless of the challenges is vital. And I think over the past year or so, I could say what we've done is how do we pivot to using these forums to really hone in on the project delivery aspect of local assistance. I know it isn't new, but like you said, with the turnover and with the new programs coming on board, it's a different model. It's a different kind of shift in the way projects are developed and the outcomes that all of us now have to adhere to. And they're aspirational, right? Connecting communities that safely and equitably. I mean, that's no easy undertaking. And what does that mean? Are we shovel ready? Are we project ready? So Tulare County, thanks for walking through some of those best practices. And it starts, like you said, with the teamwork, with the collaboration, and with that accountability. Easier said than done, but I think these are building blocks to creating this organization that can be agile to respond to each other's needs. So amongst a myriad of other objectives I won't list, but I think that one really stuck in my mind as you spoke, and want to thank you for that. And quick pitch for the audience out there, if you have, I'd love to have another agency present at the next training day. It's so effective. So it's a nice way to hear from different voices and from different regions and different areas. I think even by the questions that were asked, when that asked from the audience to Tulare County, I think it's a pulse of that interest and those needs. And so, thank you. That's it that I've got going. So I know you've got the rest of the afternoon. I want to thank everybody for attending. Looking forward to the next meeting.
Yes.